you're impossible to stop.
I got involved in politics because I think the greatest sin that anyone can commit is the abuse of power.
I think there is no moral justification for state power whatsoever. And that would entail that it's not the case that the state ought to exist.
That is a direct threat to our democracy.
Constitute a grave and immediate threat to the very core of our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Well, I don't have any comments on the laptop, but what I can tell you is that it sounds like the objective of the board is to prevent disinformation and misinformation from traveling around the country in a range of communities.
I do not consent to be ruled by the state of Pennsylvania or the United States government. So the legitimacy of the state does not rest on the consent of the governed. If it did, there would be no legitimate states.
We need to internalize that democracy has failed. We will not vote our way out of this. There is absolutely no way.
Welcome to Toxic Airwaves. No Skeef tonight, so the show is going to be about 50% as good as it normally is. But yeah, we're here talking tonight. I titled the show "Food Shortages and the Ministry of Truth." Yeah, I mean the state is doing all the marketing work for why you should use Bitcoin and why you should start stepping into sovereignty. They're just making it very obvious how terrible of an institution government is, and that they're a direct threat to your ability to survive what's coming, and not only survive but thrive. And yeah, we've been talking about food shortages for a little bit, but it seems like it's kind of ramping up. There's a guy at some point I'm going to try and post it in the Nest. And maybe I'll put it in the YouTube comments too if I can find the video that I watched earlier. But he was talking and breaking down what's happening right now. If you're awake, it's going to get pretty tough. Like the fertilizer is just not getting out there. Food plants are blowing up. There's been a pretty big increase in the amount of food plants that have blown up. Like that's like an occurrence that happens occasionally prior to this past year, but we're almost halfway into 2022, and we've had 18 food plants blow up in the U.S. and it's a global experience too, like a bunch in India, around the world, and it's kind of hard to look at things like this and not have a conspiratorial mind, especially when you've got all the maniacs in power talking about, cyber pandemic and stuff like that. So, one thing on that. So it seems like the types of food that are going to be impacted, they are more of your processed stuff, that is going to impact a lot of, lower income individuals in our society. And that's just the way it seems to go. But we're already watching right now, like normal people, your hourly workers are getting priced out of normal food as is, like steaks expensive, meat's expensive. All the food prices are going up. And so, people are pushed into this processed bullshit. And if the food prices continue to go up and the processed food that's cheaper isn't there, that's going to be pretty wild. But yeah, how's everybody in Spaces doing tonight?
Doing good.
Really fantastic today.
Good.
Amazing.
Good. Well, should probably have a little bit lighter mood. But yeah, it feels good to be taking care of these issues on the front end and kind of preparing for it. Like 2021, 2020 was much more bearable if you're a Bitcoiner, if you held Bitcoin. And I think the future will go be a lot smoother if you produce your own food or have relationships with food producers locally, and you stockpile lots of food and you have guns, so that the roving mobs, the people looking for food, are not going to get you. But yeah. So, yeah, any of you guys got thoughts on what's happening right now with the food supply?
I think it's all just engineered. It's just like another controlled demolition, just like they're doing with the financial system. It's just, two wings of the same bird going in the same direction. The tentacles of the Federal Reserve and the cabal. They just literally just reach for into everything and corrupt everything that it touches. And of course, if they're gonna ruin our money, the next logical step, I would assume, would be to also ruin the food, and not just ruin it, but eradicate it. Just bring it down to a level to where we're going to be completely and totally dependent upon them. Somebody had a tweet where they were predicting, I think it might have been Laser Huddle. He predicted by 2024, 2025 or whatever, that you're going to have to like scan your government ID to get your freaking food rations and shit. I mean, it's plausible. It's a plausible prediction with just the way things are shaping up right now.
Yeah, they've been messing with the food supply and the quality of the food since before I was alive. But I've been tracking these food plants pretty closely. Several of them, I think, are linked to the CIA. And yeah, I've got my list of 18. Because at the beginning of this year, I told my friend, I think food shortages are like the next COVID or Ukraine or whatever, the next global planetary narrative that we have. And here it is coming true.
Yeah. I bet you the tagline is that food shortages are a result of climate change. I can almost guarantee that that's going to be the thing.
No, it's Poon, bro. Poon's bombing all the processing plants for food.
Yeah. Putin's making decisions because of climate change. I just posted the video that I was referring to in the nest, and I put it in the YouTube chat if anybody wanted to check that out later. Or you could leave now, but it's pretty wild getting into it. Yeah, it's kind of amazing, like, when you track these things back to the Davos, like, there's a lot of emphasis put on the World Economic Forum right now. But there's other individuals that are involved with this too that do not get as much attention, which include, the Rockefellers and, banksters in general. What's happening right now with BlackRock and, the whole ESG push is pretty sinister, and is tied to this. But all of this stems back into the 70s with the Club of Rome. They were the kind of the OGs and this depopulationist, Malthusian, anti-human rhetoric and thinking. And yeah. Guy that I like a lot that talks about that, his name's Patrick Wood. He's an Arizona guy. But yeah, if you check him out, I think he's mostly on Rumble. But he outlines this stuff, talking about, these attempts to move towards technocracy. So B, you said you were tracking it. What have you found from last week?
Yeah, well, of course, last week I was barely paying attention, but at least with the first 16, I found a lot of stuff kind of pointing back to the CIA, which is odd. I mean, that's, maybe that's something I've planted in my head and I keep thinking, but at least the first 3 were pretty closely tied to that. And then when stuff started going down in Oregon, I got, flagged again. And I'm still looking at various sources. It's been kind of weird trying to find data on this.
Yeah. So when you say it's tied to the CIA, what do you mean by that?
I mean that I mean, in my imagination, somehow somebody within the CIA has got an arm that's conducting this. I mean, even if it's a plane crashing into something or, just a random fire starting, it's pretty easy to have people, ground operatives do that. But, that's like one person clued me into it, and I started looking, and I'm wondering if I'm just trying to convince myself of something. But yeah, again, it's like I want definitive evidence, and right now I just have a bunch of loose ends that I'm kind of tying together into this crazy board.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a really good book that I read in reference is Chaos by Tom O'Neill. And he does a really good job of outlining the stuff that the CIA was up to, infiltrating, leftist organizations during the 60s and 70s and the whole MK Ultra experiment. Probably the best resource of that type of information I've ever found. And it's hard to look at things like that they were doing then and look at other stuff going on, like, what was it called? Operation Northwoods, where the Joint Chiefs of Staff suggested pulling like a 9/11 type event where they hijack airplanes and blaming it on Castro, when they presented that to Kennedy, to look at things like that and not think that there's some pretty major fuckery going on right now domestically. So,
dude, that stuff can't happen anymore. That was in the 60s, dude.
Yeah. Our democracy.
Yeah, I think it's great how people don't they can extrapolate that to maybe present day, and like some of that can be used, or some of that can be gamed to their system, whatever, right? Just kind of mind blowing, to be honest.
Damn. We got Corey Clipston in here, Greg Zadge, Bake, Aussie. If you guys want to hop up, if you got any thoughts on the food shortages, feel free. But yeah, I mean, I think the move right now is just, you have to get out of metropolitan areas as much as possible. Like, it just doesn't make sense anymore to be living in areas like that. Like, they've gotten so dangerous and so crazy over the last decade, especially the last 2 years. And when there's any sort of I think the thing that really sparked me to want to move out of the middle of Tucson out to the boonies is watching that documentary about LA in the LA riots, where they burned down, a bunch of people burned down, the city, and just like what happens, how quickly society can just devolve into chaos. And then, also seeing what happened in South Africa recently, seeing stuff like what's happening in Sri Lanka. It just seems like a very poor decision to be living in a major city. And
well, I think the first thing everybody's going to go for is the toilet paper. If COVID taught us anything, they go straight for the Charmin, whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, live in the country and get a bidet.
Imagine, people going after ground beef like they did toilet paper. That's what I foresee.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm hoping for enough dumb people go for the toilet paper, and I'll go for the ground beef and everything before they figure out what's going on.
Yeah. I mean,
and we all. Oh, sorry.
I just, oh, go ahead.
Well, geez, I totally lost my train of thought. So now I'm going to let you go.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think the time to have been going after food like toilet paper was like 6 months ago. And I think every day, it just gets later and later, to when you could have and should have been stockpiling, getting prepared. But yeah.
I remember now. When you've got Joe Biden, who I'm not going to say is the most credible source, telling us that there are going to be food shortages, I mean, it's like, come on. It's coming out of somebody's mouth. He's telegraphing it. We've felt it as Bitcoiners long before this moment, and it's going to happen.
Yeah. Pretty interesting timing with the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah, I saw what was the lady's tweet. It was showed like Obama was talking about the governments need to step up and do more, and then like 5 days later they roll out the red carpet for this fucking another shitty taxpayer funded Overwatch thing to start judging information.
Yeah, they're gonna have to work hard to craft a narrative. It's kind of interesting because they've essentially had a Ministry of Truth in just the entire apparatus of the cathedral over the past, forever, essentially.
CNN, MSNBC, all that, yeah.
And, I've taken the approach on the show that, independent media isn't necessarily always the best alternative either. And there's like this big, movement for independent media. And there was there's been similar movements before, like with the movement from like print media to blogs, that kind of gets co-opted. And I think the majority of independent media, has in some degree been massively co-opted today. Or, if they haven't, they just funnel you back into the problem. So they might as well be the same as, the other bullshit. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I think things are just getting so out of control. They need that, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this. If there's going to be any teeth to the Ministry of Truth versus just, being dumbasses like their former Ministry of Truth and CNN and Snopes and that whole apparatus. What is going on?
I mean, Sally's the one to talk to about food. Unless we're talking about potatoes, then we all know who to go with on that one.
Fuck that guy, by the way.
Put him up. Nah, I mean, I started homesteading, and that's kind of what I started before Bitcoin. I kind of got into it that way, but no, I mean, it's the ultimate don't trust, verify. You are what you eat, and a lot of people trust too much in the food they're getting at the grocery store. and not just in what's in it. They just trust that it's good for them, but they trust it'll always be there. And what you were saying earlier about getting out of the city, I would highly recommend it because I was in LA a couple months ago and just driving around there. I'm like, the second a food shortage even hits here, like it scares me because I don't even know what the hell they're going to do. I always tell people to shake hands with farmers, and if you're not close enough to do that, then find a way to work towards that, because not a lot of people alive today, and not a lot of people like in this room understand what happens when the food goes and it's gone, and the only way to get it is if you're in the inner circle of the people producing it. It's not something I've lived through, but it's something I've researched and seen exactly how it plays out. So anyway, that was long-winded. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's no joke.
Yeah, I'm picking up my first shipment from a local farmer here coming up this weekend. So I'm trying to, move over to more of that kind of stuff rather than just be reliant on, your local grocery store and just being more familiar and get a relationship with your, local farmer. I think it's probably more important going forward,
Absolutely, and just keep your orders consistent. That way, they kind of remember you, right? And so when things ever get tight, they'll hook you up still. You know what I mean?
At this point, I'm basically completely reliant on the farmers around me and my own garden. There's maybe a couple of things that I get from the store, but I've tried over the past 6 years to get myself ready for any eventuality. So during COVID, I was just going to the farmer's market, going to the farm, picking up stuff. Nothing really changed.
Nice. Yeah, Zorn's got something in the chat. So learn to can. A case of canning jars costs $12. That's solid.
Food preservation is extremely important, especially if you're starting a homestead, because you'll only be able to produce certain things at certain times of the year, right? And whenever you have to harvest, you have to find a way to save it for year round. So, yeah, that's definitely something everybody should look into as well.
So that's like canning, lacto-fermentation, other ways of drying and preserving things. Today I'm eating hot sauce that I fermented in August from peppers that I grew.
Hell yeah. Sick.
Arizona's... Oh, go ahead, Vake.
I was wondering if I could offer a contrasting perspective. Would it be more efficient in like the event of any potential, disaster scenario, instead of, getting meat and stocking up on that and, learning this skill and that skill, wouldn't it be easier just to stack a lot of sats and maybe get like a second passport and just get out of the country when shit hits the fan?
No, because if there's no food, I mean, you got to be able to live long enough to get out of the country. And at that point, people are going to be raiding planes and shit. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to get off the ground if we're really at that point. And
do you think this is a global disaster coming, or just like a U.S. or a national?
It's a global. It's a this one, that one, this one, that one. It's a domino effect. It's not just us. So, I mean, you got to look at what's happening in China, because everything that's happening in China is something that's going to happen here in the next 3 to 6 months, as far as where that's going.
Yeah.
Food wise.
I definitely see it as a global issue, and the developing countries are probably going to be hit the worst by this for sure. And that seems to be by design, as everything. Typically.
Do you think like there's going to be some like refugee type countries that are going to be a little better off and stable out there?
I mean, potentially. I mean, that's kind of what you're seeing. Western countries like today, a lot of people are coming up from developing countries that have been really impacted by inflation and by food scarcity, for sure. So there might be some of that, here, but it's just like the extent. I don't know. There's a lot of different scenarios that could play out. And I'm not necessarily bought into one specifically is like, this is what's going to happen. But I think, the reality is,
part of me, I was just saying, part of me just thinks it's smarter just to like, if like Thailand's a spot, just get the fuck out, carry your Bitcoin with you and go to Thailand or wherever the safe place is. I'm maybe I'm a little bit of a coward, but I've always been kind of the mindset that you should run away from a danger zone instead of trying to stay and fight and preserve, because usually it ends up being a losing battle.
What's also concerning to me is right now they're making that huge push and pushing the narrative that, I mean, 4 years ago it was we would never eat bugs, and now it's racist not to think about eating bugs, and now it's just like all in the news about eating bugs. And the same with soy, right? I mean, I remember, what was it? It had to be 5 to 10 years ago. There was a huge lawsuit against Taco Bell because they were putting more soy than actual, like the protein, in there. and that was like a huge big deal, and everybody was upset. And now everybody's trying to eat the stuff that Taco Bell made their food cheaper for. There's going to be food shortages, but it's going to be what foods are short. And I see all the meats, and the ribeyes and stuff going up like $25 a pound, right? And then conveniently right next to it, they have all these, Beyond Meat and soon to be Beyond Bugs, right? And I think they're doing things that are shifting people towards the foods that they want them to eat. I think that's going to be more of a concern in the U.S. before shortages compared to other countries, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's definitely a major topic. I think one of the things that is advantageous about, kind of planting your flag versus, being that nomad is it's like you can have a network of individuals that you can work with, and you can build this, community. I mean, the whole idea of like being sovereign on your own is not realistic. Like, you need to surround yourself with people, to really, work on that division of labor, to share skill sets and focus on individual things. It's a ton of work. It's a full-time job if you were to be 100% fully self-sufficient. And so that's not really feasible to most people, nor should it be at the stage of where we're advanced as a society. So that's one thing that I think about. But yeah, it is kind of, I also have in the back of my head, is pretty advantageous being incredibly close to the Mexican border.
Yeah, circular economies, right? I mean, that's what you're touching on. That's going to be. I've always said it's not just Bitcoin, right? That solves the problem. It's Bitcoin along with the circular economies, and that's going to start shifting that power away. If you think about Walmart, that just killed all of this, all of the small businesses, like wherever it went. It's the reverse of that. It's taking it back and taking, like, if you want quality food and you want this and that. Soon it's going to be Bitcoin, how you get it, or cash. But the thing is cash they're not printing anymore, and they're burning everything that they get now and turning it all digital. So there's not going to be cash soon.
Yeah.
So it's going to be Bitcoin.
Yeah. It's going to be Bitcoin. You might have to settle for taking people's shitty gold and silver as a payment. I think bullets are advantageous. But yeah, I've been trying to move the people in my community towards Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a high. I think if we, as far as the U.S., they're one of the superpowers, so they do have a say in how far they're going to let it go. So that's kind of up in the air. But like, if they do let it go as far as us needing the barter system, it's going to be a hybrid between food, shelter, and Bitcoin, with other, like, gold and stuff like that. But there's only so much that people have gold on hand. Like, they won't be able to buy houses or anything with the watch they have. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be mostly Bitcoin and food. Those are going to be the new currency if they let it go that far.
Yeah. Some other things that yeah, exactly. We're definitely entering the age of barter economies. Some other things that are, kind of interesting and concerning is the oil reserves are being released, and I think that's intentional. Biden has set for 40% of the strategic oil reserves to be released, and I think that's going to be a continued policy to the point where it's zero. Not that that's like really a great backup, but I think it's just kind of telling of what's happening right now. You got any thoughts on that, Sally?
As far as oil,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think we've ever really had a worry on that. I think we have more control over that market than people are told. It's the administration I'm more scared of, and the regulations they're going to start pushing towards fossil fuels. That worries me long term more than short term. If that makes sense. As far as agriculturally,
I'm not sure if you finished the sentence, but you muted yourself.
well, like the oil. I mean, the oil market's always been hard to kind of understand as far as how much control over it we actually have and what we need. I mean, I can't really speak too much onto the reserves, and I don't know too much about that to speak too much on it. You know what I mean? But the only thing that scares me is agriculturally how that'll affect prices.
Yeah, for sure. I just see it as something that's kind of connected, and yeah, I'm bullish on all the wildcatters out there, all the small drillers. I mean, I think secession needs to be a serious conversation right now, and I think I haven't seen very much of it, and it kind of disappoints me.
I mean, I think we're all in the point where we need to start pushing everything more local than global, and that's a global problem that is crazy to think about, right? Like, as far as the small drillers, there's only so much they're going to be able to do. What scares me is the whole entire ESG thing. That the whole narrative scares the shit out of me because they don't have the resources to support the shit they're talking about at all. Let alone, I mean, there's no way they could mine enough lithium to do what they're asking, especially for the military shit they just did. But I mean, what concerns me is the same thing that they're doing with beef and animal proteins, right? Is the same thing they're doing with oil. They're phasing it out to things that they can do or whatever, like the ESG, but they don't have the technology to do it successfully, and it's really just about profit margins, to be honest, and control. And there's too many moving parts to really figure out what he's trying to fucking do at this point. It's not good.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it, it's kind of interesting what you're saying about lithium. What could be happening potentially is that they're driving the prices up of these, vehicles intentionally to really limit people's ability, to travel so that they're less sovereign or individualistic and more dependent on the state, for those basic necessities. And because that's, what I see, these ESG policies essentially is it's eroding people's, I mean, you just look at the past 2 years, what's happened in the middle class with them getting decimated economically. I mean, I think that's a huge part of this. They talk about things like, owning nothing and living in pods, and that's a meme. But what essentially they're saying is, you're going to be entirely dependent. You're not going to own a car. You're going to rely on ride shares primarily, to travel or public transportation. It's going to be difficult to live outside of these digital control grids, which are cities. They're going to be integrating all of these smart technologies that are going to be, tracking your biometrics and tracking you in every way possible. And the security state is just going to swell. So I think that's what the goal of these policies are. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the intent is ever to scale, electric vehicles and solar and stuff like that, but it's to really reduce people's ability to consume and to thrive.
No, exactly. I mean, dude, you're right on the nose. Exactly. So they're using these ESG narratives to make people feel better that we're doing this, it's green, it's better for the environment, it's better for this. It's going to be super expensive, and it would be way more efficient if you just gave the government control to go ahead and solve all of these issues and just give us permission to spend all money. It's not like we haven't lost billions of dollars through the Pentagon before. We're trustworthy, and it's not like we're going to, just load up all of our bags with all of these things. And it's not like we're just going to not follow through with it and just take all your money. This is exactly what's going on. And in the meantime, they're taking all the money they're making from all this ESG and they're pumping it into the philanthropies that then pump it into Vanguard and BlackRock and Berkshire, which are then buying up all the properties until nobody can own anything anymore. That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. This is why I bring up the topic of secession, because, I think individually, a lot of us are trying to secede ourselves from this bullshit system. And that's what the act of using Bitcoin and engaging in the circular economy is essentially doing. It's an act of secession. But I think the compliance with the ESG policies is just a bad idea. And I don't think it's, going to do any good. It's like complying with any of these policies is really not a good idea. And so the best, we can meaningfully do right now, other than just try and erode people's faith in the state and just support, blatant acts of defiance against it. And I'm not talking about defying the Biden administration, and being pro-Trump or, whichever way, or supporting a libertarian politician or supporting Dennis Porter, stupid, dumb shit like that. But I mean, really just saying the state hates you, I'm not going to comply with these mass murderers. But yeah, I mean, if we secede, that I think, and really engage in those movements, it might be a beneficial idea or activity.
Well, I mean, between Texas and Florida, those are some of the biggest economies of our entire country. I mean, Texas could definitely be its own country as far as that. Florida as well. But logistically versus, I mean, as far as breaking up our Navy and military that way, I don't know. That's something I don't think they'd be able to let happen. And that's something that we'd be fighting, not just the U.S., but Raytheon and, all those Boeing and all those government contractors. I think it's going to be more accomplishable through the local, just kind of opting out from the local level and branching out that way. Succeeding is that operation would take way too long for how fast they're moving with this other shit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I guess in my head, what I root for is just as much political chaos as possible. I really enjoy watching the Lauren Boeberts and Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world make these people squirm. And I definitely don't support them, and their policies and their politicians, so that their paychecks are paid through, violent extortion of individuals. And, I don't really like that. But I mean, how dope would it be to watch a state like Arizona or New Mexico or Texas secede to join Mexico? Just how much of a fuck you would that be to the federal government?
Dude, Texas wouldn't even have to do that. Texas could just succeed entirely. Their economy is insane. I mean, people don't understand how how Europe works and everything, and how much power these little countries have, and like the size of Texas to it. Half the people here don't even know like the actual size of us versus everybody else, because they just like put they raised us by putting a magnifying glass over all our maps. I mean,
yeah.
But Texas wouldn't even have to join Mexico. I think they'd do better off than themselves.
Yeah, they probably would, but I just think that I'm just, fantasizing now. There's no attachment to reality in what I'm talking about. But just the act of leaving the United States to join Mexico would be hilarious. Like, that would totally be just earth-shattering in the belief of American exceptionalism.
Yeah, I mean, losing Texas is a big deal to America. That'd be for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of getting in borderline shitcoining with that topic of secession, but.
Oh no, you're fine. I mean, we all kind of wish it at this point, depending on where you are. But I don't know. I'm trying to accomplish what I can, and I feel like the more people that get off, I mean, the further away from all of this, and the further you can opt out, and the more people you can bring towards that's going to be the power. It's gradually happening. I mean, there's a lot of people actually building, stuff like this, and it's like you were saying, it's really hard to do it all yourself, right? And but like building those relationships instead of just going to the store, right? Just taking the time to do that it's important, and it'll definitely pay off.
Yeah. Man, I just had a question in my head. What was it? Oh, yeah. I want to float this out. So, a big reason why I've been on this stint is like what I see coming is I see a digital ID system, and a social credit score system. And I absolutely hate that concept and idea. And I'm trying to do everything I possibly can to not exist in that system. And that's, one of my primary concerns right now. And I think one of the unfortunate things is a lot of Bitcoiners are going to fall into it.
Well, this is where getting out of the city comes into play. When you're in the city, you're really reliant on the fuel to get you to work. Usually you commute, right?
Yeah.
Your food's at the grocery store. You're more intertwined with social networking as far as how you communicate with the people than you are like actually seeing them, go into their house and everything. I feel like the further out from the city, the less social media you need as far as locality, right? And those are all your internet's shittier too, so you're less reliant on that. But like those are all things like that are ordering people to the cities, right? And then they're doing these ESG things. It's like, oh, sweet, Teslas are awesome. Like, oh, this is a new thing. Get Teslas. Well, they're all connected to the internet and can all be turned off at any moment. So it's like, oh, you're saving the planet, but you're giving up your ability to turn on your car because we're only a few years out from them being like, you've reached your charging limit. You are stranded. And you won't be able to charge your car, and they'll just turn it off. Or, I think like Joe Rogan mentioned something like this, where it's like, or somebody on his show, they're like, hey, like we saw you get tickets to Joe Rogan, and now you're trying to buy a ticket, on a plane, or you're trying to charge your car to go on your trip, and they just turn off all your cards. And this is going back to also, I mean, one of the craziest things is I said this earlier, they're no longer printing money, and their excuses for global warming and ESG. I mean, they stopped printing money because of that. No, they stopped printing money because they're trying to push it all to digital.
Yeah,
and it's all tying to that ESG, and it's just like, man, like they had me for a whole bunch of years. You know, growing up, we were told about global warming since what, Al Gore started that shit. Jesus, and I mean, for a while, I was like, that's how we were brought up. Like, just thinking, oh, we're here to save the planet. But now you're just like, Jesus, I'm learning all that shit. Like, it's all tied to something way more fucked up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Well, what I was gonna say was, I remember sitting down with my family around the TV watching An Inconvenient Truth very vividly as a kid. Yeah. I don't know. Climate change is kind of a serious issue. Skeef was recently diagnosed with climate change. That's why he's not here tonight. Gosh, that was probably the funniest thing I saw in 2020 was a doctor diagnosed somebody with climate change.
Oh my God.
Hey, trust the experts, folks.
Well, so speaking of, so what's the other topic? Ministry of Truth, right?
Yeah.
So, how about all these kids with hepatitis and liver failure?
I haven't seen that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been all over the news here, like all over, and like the Google charts of like the interest of people like researching it has skyrocketed, and how they're branding it is mysterious new cases of hepatitis in children.
So what do you think is the cause of that?
Do I have to say?
So
one statistic they're not going to say until it's too late is whether or not the people with hepatitis were vaccinated or not. Because if they release that, one, it'll either say, hey, it's from, the people who got vaccinated are the only ones with hepatitis, or B, like it's caused, COVID was causing it. It can't be one or the other. But I mean, also at the same time, you get COVID anyway. If you get the virus, so it's. I mean, we're not going to see that data because remember how long it's hidden until it goes to the courts for like the next 50 years.
Yeah. So it's primarily kids like ages 5 to 18 that are showing up with this.
Yeah, and it's a lot. I mean, they're the fact that it's pulling up in the news on multiple platforms, and the fact that they're actually like addressing it. They're saying mysterious, but the fact that they're addressing it means that it's something that they're not. It's too much to hide at this point, right?
Yeah, I saw a couple like news articles on just that today. And so you say it's a lot. Like, were there any numbers on that? Like percent-wise?
I mean, I'd have to pull up articles. I mean, it's just coming up so much. I couldn't tell you exact numbers, but it's enough where it's all over different outlets, and what was more concerning was if you look at the Google. I saw somebody post this earlier. It was like the Google, how often they Google it, like child hepatitis or like liver disease, and it was like level, and now all of a sudden it's like parabolic, dude. Like just everybody's researching it, and I don't know. Like I said, don't trust verify. I got to do more reading. I couldn't tell you the exact number, but it's either they're saying it's mysterious, and so I don't know if it's something they're trying to scare us on, or I mean, usually they say the quiet thing out loud right before, right? So
Yeah. Got some comments in the chat. So Polite says hepatitis in toddlers from too much isolation from COVID, immune system didn't get exposed to pathogens. It's a possibility. I mean, it's a serious concern. The isolation's not healthy on anybody. I mean, we're seeing kids have developmental issues because of all the mask wearing.
But being isolated does not cause liver damage.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very feasible.
Just like climate change doesn't cause heart attacks.
Yeah, I'm just curious what this Ministry of Truth is going to do.
It's nothing different than what we've seen. It just has a brand now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we've seen for a while different government agencies work within the media to shape and control narrative and work within the social media platforms. So yeah.
Well, given by the person who's in charge, it seems like they're going after kids to try and change the narrative to them, because it's all about TikTok, which is owned by the Chinese president, isn't it?
Well, it's a Chinese company. I'm not sure who owns it, but it might as well be, because that's the way it works in China.
Is that girl really the head of the Ministry of Truth that I see in videos, like singing shit?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Yeah. No, I mean, like, yeah.
Well, and
now I have her freaking song stuck in my head. Right?
Yeah, that stupid Mary Poppins song. I mean, and I think this is where it's really important right now, and kind of combating the narrative that they're crafting, because what have we seen over the past 2 years is that people that fought back to a certain degree fell largely into this camp of supporting the opposition of a political party. And we've also seen how easy that is to dismantle and label as terrorists and strip away rights, and so just completely exiting the system as much as you feasibly can and not generating resources to that, to activities that actually bolster authoritarian regime. And like one of the things I had in my notes is like kids should be insulated from state officials in every way possible, because like when you look at what is the state is this violent, evil institution. Why would you want kids interacting with individuals that are working for and agents of the state? And there's definitely exceptions there, because there's people inside that are trying to sandbag the system that are pretty awake. But like when you look at teachers and individuals that are just so like bought into this bullshit, it's probably not a good place for kids to be interacting with. Like the mask thing was definitely a very clear example of this. Like the thing that blew my mind, I saw a news article from the local paper where high school basketball players were playing basketball with masks on. And like, why should kids ever be subjected to this bullshit? But yeah, I think we should shift topics. So yeah, things are rough right now. Do things to try and plan ahead and get away from it. But we got to keep the morale up. Basketball is life,
Basketball is everything.
Ball is life.
So the flat Earth theory camp kind of died out. That argument seems to be over. I thought last Wednesday that I came up with the ultimate solution. It seems like most of the flat Earth people tend to be taking like a theological approach to their argument, and I think I ended it with my meme that the Earth is God's basketball. Curious what your thoughts are there.
Wait, what? God is basketball? Is that what you just said?
No, the Earth is God's basketball. Basketball's like.
Are we getting into that again?
I mean, it's plausible. I mean, I'm not going to rule it out, but it's definitely a possibility.
I've got
I mean, God's probably a big time baller, so he needs a ball to play with. So I mean, it makes sense,
Dude.
And the center of the galaxy is the hoop, maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
no, Saturn.
One thing I can guarantee is that Jesus never misses the game-winning shot.
Never, bro. In sandals. It doesn't matter where he's at. He's draining it.
He's got sandals, and he's doing that fadeaway three with 1 second left, and he nails it every time.
He's posted up on the cross. Hey.
That was a pretty fun debate. Going back and forth.
I mean, unless he's just like spinning us on his finger, I feel like if we were actually in basketball, like we'd be getting whiplash, and I'd be getting fucking motion sickness and shit. I don't know. There are earthquakes and shit, I guess, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole point of it is that the Earth is a globe, like a basketball.
Oh, I know. That's what I said earlier. I was like, oh, we're going back to this shit.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's so funny to go off on these, these fake fights. I think are important. I think getting too serious all the time is just not good for you mentally.
No, I know.
But
price is down and sideways, so we have to fight on something.
Yeah.
It's always, price is always $58K. I mean, relax, guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's really funny to see. Apparently, I haven't listened to it yet. Maybe I will. I'm kind of more interested in listening to the episode of Simply Bitcoin that Optimus supposedly doxed himself on, which I don't think he did. But apparently Peter McCormick had Dan Held on, and they cried about Bitcoin Twitter for a good bit of it. And it's really funny to, hear these individuals, cry about like, people being mean or whatever, when what we're trying to do is dismantle a system that, is run by a bunch of people that are mass murderers and doing it on an industrial level. And like, it's kind of weird. Okay. Take a poll from the audience. Is Peter McCormick a spook?
I think he's just thirsty for attention.
I don't think he's a spook, but he sucks.
I'm trying to put up a poll in the YouTube chat. I just failed. So two votes no. Surfer Jim, what's your thoughts?
Oh, hey, I listened to that episode because I heard the same thing that you just said. And, yeah, they went on for quite a while, complaining that some people are creating a narrative about Bitcoin that pushes other people away. And that may or may not be true, but to say that is to say that then they're the ones that have the right narrative, and Bitcoin doesn't allow for that because no one's in charge. So it is a little silly for them to sit there and bitch about all the people that bitch about those two, which is a lot. And they both have redeeming qualities. I don't think they're bad people. They just have things that other people don't like and call them out on all the time. And, you know, that's what you get. You're in Bitcoin, happens to all of us, right?
That's such a diplomatic answer, Jim.
Because I'm always so diplomatic, right?
So, YouTube chat, 100% yes, that Peter McCormick's a spook.
I don't personally think he is, but who knows? Can't trust anybody around here.
Yeah, I was cooking dinner, but I'm not really sure. He could be a spook, but I agree. Definitely can't trust anyone.
Yeah. I'm just going to end the poll so it's at 100%. Yeah. I mean, I just take this approach with, like, you know, I've been going on about independent media, you know, not necessarily being always a great solution for a while because they just funnel you back into the problem. Like, this is, you know, like Alex Jones, as much as I love him for the soundboard.
Stop fucking lying, God!
He, like, if you listen to his stuff, he's always like, this thing, that thing, the other thing, go, you know, vote and, you know, be a patriot. Or, you know, the same thing with, like, Tim Pool, and, you know, a lot of these individuals that are out there. And I think that's a problem. And, you know, you're essentially assisting these individuals unless there's, like, you know, real rejection of what they're doing and the systems that they've created and trying to operate out of it. And it's like the same idea as, like, you know, should you hold paper Bitcoin or self-custody it? You know, the answer is resoundingly, you should self-custody it.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing is all these bigger guys is they're like, oh, they give us shit for saying, oh, you're not attracting everybody, or, like, you know, you're turning off people. It's like, well, maybe we're just turning off the right people until they're ready, you know, instead of them just getting in the Bitcoin and just giving it to the VCs. And maybe they just need to be ready, and they definitely need to understand why they need Bitcoin instead of just getting it to make money. It's a learning. It's a whole learning. It's a tool. It's something you need to learn how to use. I guess that's where I stand with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this goes back to what I always say about how you've got to orange pill yourself, you know, and if you're trying to help people understand Bitcoin, direct them to resources, but this is a personal journey that we've all got to take, and you know, those of us here put in the work.
Yeah. We don't need Dave Portnoy holding Bitcoin to win.
God, no, I don't want him holding Bitcoin.
I'll take Surfer Jim any day over Dave Portnoy.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Dave's got weak hands. I definitely don't.
It was pretty funny seeing them at the Bitcoin conference.
I'm glad I didn't see certain people like that. I'm not sure what I would have wanted to say. I mean, he's all right. Dave's just a kooky rich dude that doesn't want to do the homework, I think. I'm not quite sure, but there's enough other people that are into Bitcoin at one level or another, which I could care less to know or meet, and, you know, because of their approach. They got some NFTs going or whatever, but I love Bitcoin, of course. Yeah, sure you do. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a meetup in Tucson this past weekend, and it was pretty dope. And everybody got to experience that Azteca terminal, which made me very, very happy. Very grateful for the guy that, see you later, Greg. Very, very grateful for the guy that is distributing those. And he's kind of taken an approach where he's opening up and helping other Bitcoin meetups start dispensing Bitcoin in an ethical manner. And it's fantastic. See you later, Marty. But yeah. I mean, I've never, my entire time in Bitcoin up until recently, I wasn't much of a non-KYC guy. But recently with where things are trending, I'm moving more and more in that direction. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens as they, continue to try and attack the fiat off ramps as much as possible. I'm kind of curious if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, the people that control the money currently will try every angle, every avenue they can use to slow down the adoption, introduce FUD about Bitcoin, try to get people to look the other way if they're awesome stable coin that gives all these great benefits and whatever. So I think nothing is essentially off the table as far as what they would try to do to Bitcoin. It's sort of like a race right now. In some ways, it kind of is important to get as many people to recognize the importance and adopt some Bitcoin, so that more people in positions to prevent the wrong laws from being written actually get it. I totally hate the whole political angle, but those are the people with the guns, if you can convince those people to not write some more magic words on paper, taking our rights away, and then paying their enforcers to come and make sure that happens. If we can stop that from happening at any level, we're better off. But they'll try, right? Because it takes their power away. We all know that. So it sucks, but I think we're slightly ahead on the race though, because I feel like they keep trying to play catch up, and Bitcoiners are essentially ahead of them, adoption and technology. I don't know. It's tough. There might be a lot I can't actually see behind the scenes. Maybe the NSA is in charge of the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Actually, I want to switch topics. Something just popped in my head. But yeah, definitely interesting stuff to think about. So, I wonder if it would be incredibly advantageous to start exploring private policing as a solution to what's going on right now. And, maybe going and incorporating cities that instead of are run in a democratic manner or ran much more with anarchist principles. I think that'd be interesting. I mean, that might be one of the most powerful things we could do right now. Getting away from, like Jim, you were talking about, they're the people with the guns. What if we, to some degree, start to erode that? Because I don't think we've seen too many examples of private policing, and if that is implemented and it succeeds, that might be a pretty powerful example for others.
Yeah, to the extent you see private policing, it's basically security firms that are looking over real estate, stores and businesses and arenas. So there's some, but I think the government really won't allow for large scale. So maybe if you have a community, a gated community, you might be able to tell the local sheriff in your area, look, somebody in this community has a problem. They're calling our cops, not you guys. But of course, the guys that surround your community are going to tell you that you're under their jurisdiction. If they want to, they'll just tell you what to do, because they always are going to have more guns. So it's a tough challenge getting the larger governments to leave you alone. But I do believe it could it could easily be done. I think if you had security companies that had to do with, that had to actually perform, or you could fire them and get another company, their incentives totally change. They're not as apt to harass their customers on the side of the road for a sticker on their car that's got the wrong date on it, when they didn't really do it's not really a crime. There's all kinds of stupid things, like when your security agency could get relieved of its duties for a less tyrannical one in a free market, they would operate differently. Their incentives would be different. So I think it's possible, but I don't know that it could happen until current government structures fall apart, when their money falls apart. So, hyper Bitcoinization could usher in a day where much smaller private police forces are everywhere, and then they interact with each other because, for the same reason they don't want to piss off their own customers in their jurisdiction, they would want to work with the other agencies. At least I could see that there could be incentives to work with other agencies in corresponding jurisdictions, simply for the fact that one company doing a much better job could end up getting a larger portion of the market, and so it would be a competition for the better company. Like who would give the better service, not who could extort more money, not who could get more convictions, but who could have more happy customers. So it would be good for there to be competition, and then these security agencies that are meant to protect us now would actually be way better at it, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any law preventing incorporating a city not collecting taxes, only collecting voluntary contributions, and doing things that way.
Well, I know you can incorporate. I work in 2 incorporated villages, and they do essentially have their own government, their own mayor, their own court, their own police force with a chief, and you can operate at a smaller scale, and for small local infractions, the citizenry sees those enforcers and that court system, but they are still beholden to the larger township or county or state, and of course the federal government that everybody's beholden to at some level. So it already happens at that level. I'm sure there's thousands of incorporated villages all over the country. I know of a bunch of them on Long Island, where, as I said, I work in 2 of them fairly regularly. And, there's some benefits there. I say this all the time. I think government works much better on a small level. I can go in and get a building permit in some of these little local towns because I'm dealing with the localist of administration, like 10 people in an office running a village of 500 homes, and I get a building permit to do even some fairly good-sized projects in a day or a week, whereas in the larger township that we're part of, that we're encompassed by or whatever, I'm not sure how to say that, but this township, where if I wasn't in this little incorporated villages, if I was just in the one right next door, which isn't incorporated, that same building permit could take 6 months. And it's just a larger level of government, but that's just how it gets. And at the federal level, it's even worse. And there are parts of where I work that are regulated by at least state level Department of Environmental Conservation, and their permits take 6 months as well to get because sometimes they claim jurisdiction over a project area, and the local jurisdiction says, "Oh, you're working over there. Okay, we have to get their permit before we'll give you ours." And it's just like one government forcing you to go use another bureaucracy of government. And the bigger it gets, the more you got to do that bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the county aspect is, probably the biggest issue there that I could think of. But it would really be interesting to experiment with this where you have, positions where they're not supported through force, that individuals are elected to. There's, term limits and the spirit of, rotation to some degree. And it's a complete volunteer position where there's not, incentives, financially to stay in the position. And it's, really structured as more of a, strictly service position, volunteer basis versus like I am now in authority over, these individuals and have a police force. And that's kind of where I get into, the private police force of like, you're not going to go bust down somebody's door for not paying taxes or, for doing something that is not pleasing to you. And then you could set up systems where you could intermediate and solve issues without necessarily having a court in the traditional sense. Or you could have intermediaries that both individuals trust, kind of hash things out. I mean, there's a ton of ways to think about it and explore, but it would be kind of a fun experiment. There's these guys, they have what's called the Pasnia, the Free Republic of Pasnia, and it's not geographically based, but they wrote up a constitution, and it's a voluntary contract that you can, enter into or exit from, and it's kind of along these lines where they have mutual aid set up and this network building, and I think it's a pretty cool thing to be on the periphery of, for sure. But I think these things are incredibly important too, to start getting in, experimenting, trying to implement these theories in the same way we're talking about circular economies, ways to organize without state involvement. Yeah.
Sorry, I got distracted. I didn't catch everything you said.
Oh. I just want to...
To get Ozzy in here, I see she's listening. She's always got something good to say. What's up, Ozzy? And Kiwi, too. Couple from the other side of the globe. Plus, they got cool accents.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, so Pledit in the chat. Here's a controversial topic. So Pledit says, apparently 5 out of 9 Supreme Court justices has come to consensus on overturning Roe v. Wade, and that abortion is going to be a major topic going forward. I've got my beliefs on abortion, and I don't really want to talk about the merits of it. But the obsession with it in our culture is strange to me, that this is one of the primary issues that is being focused on. And I get that people have strong opinions either way, but of all the things that you could be focusing on right now. What's going on, Knickers?
What's happening?
Not much. Dude, are you stoked for the Ethereum 2.0, the merge, the splurge, the verge, or whatever it is?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but I did put out a tweet today. I'm sure there'll be bigger rug pulls, but I'm just waiting for that whole thing there, the beacon chain thing. There, essentially, that's what is going to be ETH 2.0 when all of this actually happens. That's what is going to be left, is this proof of stake chain where they already have $33 billion locked into it. I can't wait till we get to the day where they figure out that they can't do anything with it.
Yeah. It's something we need to do on this show more, is shit on shitcoins. So is it this one, the calling it now Bucon chain will be the biggest shitcoin rug pull ever? That tweet?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then somebody called me on it, and was like, ever? And then I don't remember who it was, but they put a, one of the gifts for BitConnect. And I was like, yeah, touche.
Well, I don't know. Fiat's a pretty big rug pull.
Yeah, fiat's pretty huge, but I mean, in terms of shitcoins, I'd have to say that BitConnect to this day was maybe the biggest rug pull. I mean, in terms of like community and everything like that, and I mean, it was just such a massive scam, and I don't understand how anybody who sat down to do the math for literally, it took maybe 10 to 15 seconds to figure out that this was completely impossible and that it was a pure Ponzi scheme.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still bullish on BitConnect.
You know, they gave it back to the community, so anything can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it kind of blew my mind because, like, the whole Ethereum thing has kind of been a big topic in the mining world. Because if they eliminate proof of work miners, that's going to be pretty disruptive for all the shitcoin mining. And I started to look into it, and it blew my mind that these people like locked up their coins where they can't touch them for like, they're locked up until after like 6 months after they supposedly are going to implement these policies. And this seems like shitcoining is dumb enough to like hold these, you know, coins over a long period. But like, I think the majority of people doing this stuff have the idea of like, we're going to flip it and make fiat. And it seems so absurd to lock up your shitcoin.
So it's interesting that you say that. I forget who this guy was, but he was essentially one of the people I think that helped Joe Lubin with Consensus, with creating Consensus. I'm completely forgetting what his name is, but anyways, he did an interview, and in this interview, he explained how essentially the reason that ETH and all of these things don't implode, right, is because they keep all of the money, right? Like all the fiat that people exchange that dump into the shitcoins, they keep it all in ETH, but they keep it all in these different shitcoins. So to the outside world, right, the money is never leaving. It's always just sitting in the ecosystem. So you see, like that $33 billion, like it hasn't left the ecosystem. It's still sitting there in shitcoin, but it's done on purpose because the reality is that otherwise the whole system, right, essentially the whole house of cards would implode, right? Because like think about it, like with Bitcoin, there's no ecosystem in Bitcoin to go take your Bitcoin and then all of a sudden dump it into a whole bunch of Bitcoin shitcoins, right? So that the value doesn't disappear. You're either holding Bitcoin or you're holding fiat, or for some reason you're holding frickin' Tether. You know, like it's really, I think it's like it's one of those options. So there isn't much room to go, but Ethereum, what it did was that it made it so that you can just continue to bop around from shitcoin to shitcoin and to the outside world. Ethereum doesn't look like it's ever lost any value. And then they get to turn around and use terms like total value locked. And, you know, the false narrative of, look, we're building an ecosystem. Look at how much it's growing. It's a huge fucking scam. I mean, obviously we know that, right? But I'm just saying it's bigger than people know.
So do you have any predictions? Like, is this attempt to move to proof of stake going to fail and they're going to retain value with these locked up tokens essentially and just say, oh, we had to push it back again? Or, you know, what do you think's going to happen here?
You know what? I've thought about this a little bit. I try not to think about it too much because I do have to read a lot about shitcoining for the show. So I try to think more about Bitcoin. But so I think that they're going to attempt to move to proof of stake, but I don't think it's going to work properly. The same way that Ethereum Classic, right, all of a sudden became ETH 2.0 because the DAO hack, right? I think it's going to be the same type of thing. I think they're going to try to migrate their proof of work chain to proof of stake. I think it's going to go horribly wrong. And I think that they're going to end up with another fork. And there's just going to be this other beacon chain. I can't see it working any other way. to be honest, because unfortunately I have been keeping up with the the development, and it seems that so the last time, right, they were supposed to it was supposed to come out June 6th, but they've already pushed it back, I believe. I believe they were supposed to start this process June 6th, but it already got pushed back. So it got pushed back because they introduced so they patched a previous issue that introduced another issue that broke I think it broke the consensus completely. So again, right? Like this is not supposed to be money. I get that they think that they're developing and that they think that they're like innovating and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like none of that is supposed to be money. It's all garbage and it doesn't work. So, and it just keeps getting evidenced, right?
But I thought it was ultrasound money.
Yeah, the website's definitely ultrasound.
There's a shitcoiner that I've been trying to orange pill who put in $2,000 at the all-time high, and he told me, "Hey, listen, I'm getting 5% APR. This is going to be so good. Screw your stupid maxi stuff." And I just checked now; he's getting 4% APR. Plus, they pushed the date back. Like, okay, guy.
3% incoming.
Yeah, it's going to be like BlockFi.
You knew it. Exactly, Tucson. That's exactly what I was referring to.
So I saw Hodl Tarantula was tweeting that he's talking to somebody that's having a real hell of a time getting their Bitcoin off of BlockFi. So is this a thing? Like people can't pull their funds off?
I was not aware of this, but if that's true and it's a legitimate, you know what I mean? Like he, his account is in good standing. There hasn't been some weirdness or fuckery. If that's the case and he's having a hard time getting the money off it, that's really scary stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But they are rehypothecating, aren't they?
Yeah. No, they definitely are. No, I think what it is he's in good standing and everything, and he's been waiting for like a month to get his funds off of it, which is kind of crazy.
Did they say, or did he explain what the reason they gave him is?
I don't think so.
I got something on that topic. My boss at my day job actually got rugged by Bit River. He had a miner over there in Russia. He showed me the email and everything. He got screwed on that. Basically, they told him he might get some money, he probably won't. And I've been harping on him forever because he's a maxi, and but he's been keeping his coins on Voyager, the exchange. I've never even heard of it, and I've been harping on him because he was just like heartbroken over his miner getting rugged from him. I was like, now think about how you're gonna feel if your exchange rugs you or gets hacked or something. Think about how bad you're gonna feel when you lose all your Bitcoin. And so he downloaded Moon Wallet, and he's gonna start looking into some cold storage. But he was telling me that it was taking like a few days to get it off. They wouldn't let him pull it all off at once. I don't know how common that is. I don't know how much he has, obviously, but he said he was having to pull it off in like chunks. He couldn't just do it all in one go.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it also depends on his KYC level, because different exchanges will let you withdraw different amounts based on how much KYC you've done with them. So there's also that aspect of it too. But yeah, it's, in terms of whether it's common or not, a lot of exchanges, like I could tell you, oh man, I'm totally forgetting the name of it, but it's a really terrible exchange. It's a horrible shitcoin exchange. Anyways, I remember once withdrawing, and it took, I think it was like 3 weeks before I got my Bitcoin. So like I initiated the transaction and it just sat there waiting. Like it's like they didn't even batch the frickin' thing. It just sat there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that exchange in Canada where the guy faked his death and ran off with all the money. Like
Quadriga.
Yeah. I mean, I just gotta say, like, I've kind of been negative towards Compass on the show for a while. And I think I think Bitcoin mining to get some exposure is accessible to everybody. The economics are different for every individual, but it doesn't make sense for everybody to mine at home. And this whole idea that we need to make it easier for people to mine at home, it just is not based in reality. Like if the economics don't make sense, they don't make sense. Like the way to make it easier for people to mine at home is to drive down energy costs and for there to be, better markets in the world of energy. But like if you're sitting at like 30 cents a kilowatt hour, the solution for you is not to go with a hosting company necessarily, but to just go buy Bitcoin. And, on the topic of like, being reliant on these exchanges and stuff like that, this is a big reason why I like Azteco, because it doesn't have to be the case where you go and sign up for Strike or sign up for Swan, even though I like Jack Mallers and I like Corey Clipston and I like those services, but it doesn't have to be this way where you go through, the system of gatekeepers essentially to access Bitcoin. Like you can make relationships with people that are mining it and buy it from them. Or, and this is a big reason why I have the Azteco terminal at the meetup, because I want people that walk in that have never interacted with Bitcoin before to download a wallet, scan a Lightning QR code, and have Bitcoin in their wallet immediately. And that's their first interaction with it, just from a psychological standpoint of like, oh, it's pretty easy to do stuff like this. Like you don't need to. And then we can have a topic on, how to properly custody it. But yeah, I mean, there's things that we can do. And I think like this is something I've been super passionate about, and I'm grateful that the stars are kind of aligning with the meetup crew. But yeah, I mean, like Bitcoin mining is incredibly difficult, and this is something that people don't understand. Like even like a lot of medium size small miners get wiped out, and they get wiped out for a variety of reasons. Power rates change, funding that they were relying on gets pulled. Just the economics of Bitcoin, the price dips exponentially, and it's just not profitable to mine. Like there's a ton of different things in here. And so like this whole meme of like mining accessible to everyone is just, it's a bad meme. Like anybody, can buy an S9 and run it themselves. Anybody could run an S19 at home, run it themselves. It might not be, you always have the greatest examples, but it just doesn't always make sense, and that's okay. And one of the things that's exciting about Bitcoin mining is the way that it interacts with the energy grid. Not from just a stabilizing standpoint, but like a monetization standpoint, because it becomes incredibly profitable to mine, and people are constantly searching for the the cheapest electricity cost, and it makes electricity generation, a lot more expensive. Like, Bitcoin miners is a big conversation. Like, how do we generate cheap, reliable electricity? Your typical person, living in a residential home is not thinking about like how to find the cheapest electricity to run their AC on. Like people live in places happily with 30 cents a kilowatt hour. They might gripe about it a little bit, but it's not like there's these huge economic incentives tied there. But yeah, I mean, if you get into Bitcoin mining, you have to be a masochist. You have to really like be willing to step into a lot of pain, do a lot of work. It's constantly changing. If you close your eyes for a year, you're going to be completely lost to what's happening right now because the technology changes so much. So you constantly have to be on your toes, watching the market and all of these things. And, I mean, that's not the case if you're just running some like, a couple machines at home. Like that's doable, but, I want to, like, I mine at home. I work for, a mining supplier company, and, I just hope this meme just makes sense. Like, before you ape into buying machines that you're never going to ROI on, or, get rug pulled by, a hosting company, because hosting's an incredibly difficult business too. It's the compounding between mining and, dealing with equipment failures and oftentimes dealing with a facility that you don't own. And that's an incredibly, risky business to get involved in, from a business standpoint, let alone a customer. So, all right. I think my rant's over. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think it does. And you bring up, some very good points, especially about the incentives, right? So look, to your point, 30 cents kilowatt hour, you're not going to be able to mine profitably, paying those kind of fees. Like it's just not happening. So for the people that are doing home mining for the sake of learning about Bitcoin, that I think is a worthwhile endeavor, to learn how the Bitcoin network works. You get yourself a miner. You also maybe set yourself up with a node, so that you can validate transactions and, you learn about the two pieces, right, that work together. But in terms of this narrative that it should be accessible to everyone, it should be accessible to the people that have the means to get to get this equipment. The reality is that this equipment is going to get, oh, sorry, give me a sec.
Yeah. Like going off of what I was saying about, you have to be a masochist. What I'm saying about this is like, Bitmain sucks. WhatsMiner sucks. All of these companies that produce ASICs sucks. If you have something go wrong, which you almost definitely will, when you get to a certain scale, or if you just have, bad luck, you're going to have to, really be resourceful and figure this stuff out. And there's stranded electricity everywhere, that you can be resourceful and go find, in any city that you're in. There's going to be a way to generate, and capture free electricity that's just being wasted. But that's different. That takes initiative and hard work versus just, paying money to, some company to host it for you, which is incredibly easy, or plugging it into your home, which, is a little bit more work, but yeah, it's a really difficult business to be involved with. And there's a reason why, once you start talking with people that have been in the space for a while, there's been a lot of people that have failed at it, for a variety of reasons, oftentimes out of their control. So, it's good and all to, shit on Compass, but they probably had, a lot of, they were probably betting on the Bitcoin price going up. They were probably betting on a lot of different factors that didn't happen. They probably weren't planning for a war in a foreign country, or, some of the issues that they had happen to them. And it's just, anytime you put your money into, this market, I mean, you look at Bitmain, the S17. The S17 is a piece of garbage. Like, the heat sinks just fall off, and the failure rates are astronomical. And Bitmain, arguably, makes the best machines, just based on efficiency. You can talk about WhatsMiner being higher quality, more durable, lasting longer, which I think there's some validity to. But, it's like the biggest producer of ASICs in the world, and you buy lemon machines and you have a high failure rate on them. How do you plan for that? There's these things that happen in the space that, make it incredibly difficult. So I just want to preface that, get that out there as, there's things like the Future Bit Miner, which I think is, kind of a novelty thing, like a block clock. Like, if you want to, buy something like that, think of it in that way, or like what Knickers was saying as, like kind of a fun way to learn, but it's not like a real legitimate way to get into the mining, area. And I think it's kind of a waste of money, but, yeah, I mean, there's going to be hosting companies that come around in the future, and you're going to have to be contending with all of these things. And they might be run really well, and there might be issues. So, it's difficult, but yeah. That's the end of my rant.
Well, going back to the technology piece, right? The technology for this, like, look, Intel is entering the space. Okay, so like I know that Bitmain, has been like the main player, and there's the What's miner, and there's also, I think, Blockstream is going to be working on a miner as well. So look, there's going to be a lot of competition entering the space. Intel has been making chips for over 50 years. Okay, so I just personally think that they are going to create an environment of extreme competition, like even more than what exists today. And like we may see Intel emerge as as a leader in this, and they may help bring down the costs, right? And not only that, but I think that Intel coming to the table is going to force AMD's hand to also show up, which again increases competition and helps, I think, all of us, right? So I think that at the end of the day, again, right, you just need to be in the right locality. If you're wanting to just do home mining, right, or hobby mining, then you need to have access to cheap electricity or cheaper electricity. If you're paying something like, I think it's, what is it, like 13 cents or less per kilowatt hour, I think that you can be profitable. So, if you can get into a place like that, or free electricity, that's the best, then fantastic. Otherwise, you're better off just, either you do KYC free stacking with, BISC or HODL, with like a VPN, or you go and get yourself some KYC Bitcoin and you're KYC'd. And it doesn't really matter because we're all KYC'd anyways. I know that, like, people get like extreme on the privacy, and for sure privacy is very important, but at the end of the day, you have to realize your information was already out there, so it's not like someone isn't going to figure it out if they're really looking.
Yeah. It's like, I think we win this. Like, I think the privacy aspect is important to explore, and to try and use and implement. I think having alternative, like supporting alternative on and off ramps other than just your typical KYC exchange, I think is important, because of where we're going, and I think if we have a lot of people using those on and off ramps, and if they try to close them, it's going to be, pretty disruptive for these individuals using. Like, there's a reason why there's Bitcoin ATMs all over the place. And, most people have their thoughts on Bitcoin ATMs. Oh, yeah. Got some good comments I'll circle back to. But I think, the important part of this is the psychology of it, of like, you shouldn't be monitored in everything that you do, and you shouldn't have to ask for permission to interact and exchange value with people. And I think that's the real takeaway. And when you start operating in a manner where you're moving in that direction, it opens up the door for a lot of these things. And it's very similar to stuff we were talking about earlier of creating a circular economy for the food. Like, there's no reason why a state official has any ability or any legitimacy to say, no, you cannot drink or buy raw milk, or, to say that, the farmer has to, keep lizards out of its garden in Arizona, because that's a stupid thing, policy that Pima County has. Stuff like that I think is powerful when you start breaking those down. But yeah, so Pledit says nodes should be for everyone, not necessarily mining, and I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody should be able to validate their own transactions. And, we can see with the development that's been happening in Bitcoin, right? Like we can see that people are sticking to that, that mantra of making it possible for at least the great majority of people who want to get into it to do it. And it's not really that expensive. I mean, let's face it, right? A Raspberry Pi. Besides the current shortage, they were really great and easy to get. And there you go. Every single person can validate their own transactions.
Yeah. And I think one of the exciting things is, like, you can run a node on a laptop, and anybody can go get a laptop at a pawn shop. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a Raspberry Pi. Like, the Raspberry Pi is cool and all, but go get a cheap laptop, run Bitcoin Core.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I always, for me, I always just think of it as a utility, so I immediately think of the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. I've been a masochist, spending way too much time on Raspberry Pis through my Bitcoin journey. And looking back, I wish I would have just gotten a laptop.
I don't know. At first it was pretty rocky for me, but now it's been pretty good. I run in the Crypto Cloaks the Triton case where you can run 2 nodes. So I run an Embassy and a My node in there, and I also have an Umbrel on another machine, but that one I've had turned off for like a month or so.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty solid. Start 9. My sad relationship with Start 9. Love those guys. I wish they came out with their personal server, like they're partnering with whatever that company is called, Prism, to actually make a legit server instead of a Raspberry Pi. And I wish they'd started with that, but the concept and the model of self-hosting everything is fantastic, and the way that they're working on plug and play, like the money that I spent on the first Embassy, just in supporting those guys, I say was worth it. But I think, yeah, the idea of having everybody having a server in their home, like a real legitimate server, is the feature and is extremely exciting.
So I saw them at Bitcoin 2022, and I did pay for the pre-order of that machine. So I am going to be getting one. So I'll let you know how this thing goes. It's definitely not cheap, and I'll tell you that price point for that machine is definitely outside the realm of the average user, right? Like now it's like, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like $1,400, or it might be more. I don't even know, but it's definitely not. You know what I mean? Like the Embassy has a specific use case for the retail end user, whereas this new one that they're making is more of the business use case.
Yeah, I don't know. That price point is super exciting, because if you think about people Uncle Jimming off of the, yeah, I'm gonna go in on the pre-sale right when I end the stream. That's a pretty good price point in my opinion. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've heard some complaints about Matrix recently, but the idea of like self-hosting communications that you can have, like, this is something I wanted to do for my family, something you can do for your meetup circle. Like, most of my communication today happens on Telegram. And if you can move to a platform that has similar utility as Telegram, might not be as good, but that it's self-hosted, and you can build these communication networks off of these servers located in somebody's home, that is a big game changer in my opinion.
No, I totally agree. I was just referencing the fact that, like, right now with about $300, you can get up and running with a node, or like you said, have an old laptop. You don't even need a Raspberry Pi. You could just install Bitcoin Core. So there you go. Whereas this thing is, even though, yes, you can definitely, do the sharing and everything like that and hosting, but, it's still, I don't know if you're on the site right now. What is it? $1,400? $1,600?
I just see the pre-order for 42.
Yeah. I asked him because, like, when I was there, he's like, oh yeah, it's like $40 for the pre-order. I'm like, oh great. Like, what's the difference? And then when he told me the number, I'm like, what?
Yeah, $1,700.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and you get $200 off if you pre-order it.
Yeah, exactly. So this thing's like $2,000.
Wow. $1,500.
Well, get excited. This thing is supposedly going to be amazing, and to be honest, one of the reasons I had I had the faith that I had to go with it was because I got the original Embassy, and anybody who's used the Start9 product knows they were the first ones to have the marketplace. They had it before the Umbrel, but not only that, but they also had a pairing app from your phone to your node. So when you set up your node, you did it initially, through your phone, and it was just a really easy, simple user experience. Anyways, you can see that they've put in the time.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing switch in the direction, and I think products like that are so important to support. Like, you just have to get out of this digital gulag as much as possible. I'm looking it up right now if they have it supported on the F-Droid store. It doesn't look like they do, so I'm going to go bust Matt's balls. I send Matt a lot of DMs. Yeah, well, anyways, we're about 2 hours in. I spend a lot of time with Bitcoiners in person. I go to 5 or 6 meetups a month. I spend a lot of time with Bitcoiners on the internet via this show, via Bitcoin Kindergarten, via Telegram, constantly talking with Bitcoiners. I think it's incredibly important, don't live in your silo, get out there. And, I get that people, take their OPSEC seriously, but I think it's just good for your health. Like, we're creating, this whole new culture and community that's, chat's bugging me about the link to the Zorn. It's on the Start9 website. But yeah, we're creating this whole new community. I think it's exciting. The memes are important, generating propaganda. We've got the Ministry of Truth coming out, and it's just, not only is it fun, but it's important. The whole idea of you have to be like docile and a pussy for people to adopt Bitcoin is dumb. So those are my closing thoughts. Shout out to Dirtbags Bar for sponsoring the show. Definitely the best bar, the Garden of Eden of bars. Skeef was, I don't know where I was going with that. Well, Skeef wasn't here because he was diagnosed with climate change, but Dirtbags Bar is the place you can go to get advice from University of Arizona students on how to treat your climate change, and it's also the best place to find your future ex-wife. So I know there's a lot of Bitcoiners out there that are single. If you want to jump into a relationship that is going to end very poorly, Dirtbags Bar is the place to be. It's a roller coaster, just like following the Bitcoin price. So if you're looking at trading view charts all day, and the recent price stagnation just isn't doing it for you, go get in a toxic relationship with somebody that believes in critical race theory at Dirtbags Bar. But trying to think if I have any shout outs. Shout out to Zebedee for the streamer tool. Somebody sent me a tip. Big thank you to that. I grew a mustache just for this show for Kaz. So bullish on mustaches. We'll see. Oh, yeah. The other thing, practice shooting and stock up on ammo. But anyways, I'll keep the spaces open for a little bit if anybody wants to hang out. And thank you for the people that participated in chat, participated in spaces tonight. When Skeef isn't here, I'm just kind of flying blind, limping along because he's a pretty big part of the show. The majority of it was his idea. So thank you for your participation and not just getting me into long, boring monologues. But yeah, have a good one, guys.
Hey, thanks for giving us a place to come hang out and talk, dude.